So hello everybody. I have been here 2 years before, and I'm really happy to be here today again. I brought a colleague of mine, Robert, with me, and yeah, there are a few things I would like to say, to mention before we start. The first thing is Robert is awfully nervous, and I'm awfully ill. So we had very poor time to prepare this presentation. Due to the poor time, we never had the chance to go through this presentation in total. What we did was, technically spoken, a little smoke test. We never did the full regression. So whatever you expect in the next minutes, just lay back and enjoy, right? The third thing is the good news is that between you and the lunch is only us. The bad thing is because we had two speakers, we got 40 minutes. So on top of this delay, there are now 40 minutes. And I hope nobody's starving at the end. When we were asked to come here, in fact, we had a little conversation what might be interesting to present you here at the Evento. I talked to Eduardo, and I invented an idea that maybe we should switch the focus a little bit. You have heard a lot of technical talks, technical solutions, and we saw a lot of fantastic solutions for the demands, technical demands. But, well, the question could be, if everything works so perfectly fine with open source software, why hasn't open source software not already conquered the whole planet? And obviously, it has not happened. So something must be, well, different or not completely in that way that the people take the open source idea. So we would like to focus a little bit on a different side, following our ground principle that there are no technical problems in the world. It's completely organizational problems or interpersonal problems. And that's why we would like to stress a little bit the black and white view of open source software. And we would like to divide the world in two parts. The first part is, this works and I click. Yeah, the no open source software fraction. The no open source software fraction, we will call them no's. It's obvious what their opinion about open source software is. They might have different reasons for that, but they are clearly no's. And on the other side, we have the pros open source software fraction. They have also different reasons, but they are completely clear pros. We would like to play a little bit with these two sides for this afternoon. And that's why I would like to ask, are there any no's in this room? Oh, come on. I get there are no's, and they don't dare to come to confess. Are there any pros? Oh, a few. Wow. But what about the rest? I don't know. Okay, so maybe there are some no's. Well, let's have a closer look to these two fractions. The first fraction is the no's, and the others are the pros, right? The no's in general are smart, they are reliable, but a little bit boring. The pros, they are brilliant, but unfortunately a little bit crazy and chaotic. And these chaotic people can generate a lot of trouble, and that's why we found out these three questions. which might be helpful if you are in trouble with pros in your company. First question is, have any pro in your company mentioned that there might be an open source idea? So this is the first warning. Yeah. Second step would be, are you aware of an upcoming open source software project? Or at the end, is there already pro software running in your company? So then it's the highest alert and you have to react. This can make you angry, and we don't want to leave you alone with this anger. And we want to show you 10 foolproof steps to successfully avoid open source in your company. We would like to start with it works like this. So the first, I leave this here. Geht das? Okay. So the first thing is, it's very important if you want to avoid open source software in your company, you have to insist on a strictly hierarchical information structure. This is very important because otherwise too many people know too much. If you are not in the central of the communication, they find solutions at the end. This might be dangerous. Another very important point is only seed information by word of mouth. If you write them down, someone can come back to you and show you what you have said. That might be difficult. And the last thing is always hide a little piece of information so that in case of urgency, you can blame somebody else not to react like what you have done, because you have only this little secret information and you, the fault is clear. So I think this is a very good start for avoiding open source software. You don't think so?
I don't think so. The problem is I have my jacket on, and that looks more like an no.
Yeah,
yes.
And I look like the freak, or what do you want to say?
Okay. I'm afraid that I need it. Okay.
And take this. Yeah. And it works.
Okay. Frank's position was the position of an established senior CIO in a company. Yeah? And the problem is, and I'm afraid that he used most of our time for the warm-up. The problem is, and if I see you, I think most of us are internet people in a way that we communicate in a global style and we share information and everything. And that have big influences of our work we do. And these senior CIO guys in big companies, in a public authority or so, are thinking a whole different. And to make it short, I want to tell you a little story I had some weeks ago. I'm from Germany, and we made a project there with the German police. And the German police is a big employer for many thousands of people. And we looked at their IT processes, and the goal is we want from our paper-based work with all these documents to a more digital world, electronic, like they call it. We want to work electronic, yeah, with computers. And I was there, and they should explain how the process work, because in fact they use emails, yeah, since a few years. It's not all new to them, and somewhere in the discussion they mentioned, yeah, and we have this central inbox where every letter goes, and our mails are forwarded to this central inbox. In person, there are a few people which do the inbox work. And Then the inbox people forward the mail to the next one in the hierarchical structure. And then I asked, okay, how is this forwarding done? And no fun. They said, we print the email. we print the email, put a date stamp on it, sign it, put it in a paper folder. Then we write the next recipient on the paper folder. Then we put it in a physical outbox. Then we wait for the messenger. A messenger in the old way, yeah? A guy who takes physical paper and carry it anywhere. Then we wait for the messenger. It takes 1 or 2 days. And it's done. The mail is forwarded. Yeah, great. And that really happens.
Nowadays.
And what I want to say is that when we as open source guys go into a company, and the bigger the company is, the more complicated it gets, we have to have mercy with them. Yeah? Don't stress it too much. Okay, I talk too much. That's the point. Yeah? Communication does work complicated in some companies. And
Nee, du musst den
I have to push the button. Now my jacket is okay. Yeah? Now I'm the no open source guy. I think I have to explain the word call for tenders. Yeah? If you are a big company, especially if you are a big public authority, you have to make a call for tender if you are looking for software or IT services, because all the corruption stuff and so on is legal, there are laws to prevent corruption. So you have to make a call for tender. Is this clear? Yeah. It's publicly announced, this is what we want. You have to describe what you want, and then you have to make a guess about the estimated price of all that. And if you reach defined limits, cost limits, you have to publicly announce it in your country or European-wide. So, and the limits are very low. Around 200,000 euros, you have to announce European-wide what you want. Okay? So you have many companies which can bid for this call for tender. And I don't want that every crazy open source guy is bidding with his good, cheap solution on my call for tenders, because I already know some good companies with which I work for many years, maybe Microsoft, and I want them.
Maybe. Just maybe. Maybe SAP.
Or SAP, and I want to work with them further. So I have some possibilities to write my call for tender so that only a few companies can compete in this. And the first one is, you can ask in your call for tender, how big is your company? I want, and it's a must criteria, that you have at least 50 people employed in the last 3 years. Yeah? So 30% are out of business at the moment. Then you can write in your call for tenders, I want that your business had sales around 15 million euros per year in the last 5 years. Next. And you can ask for some references. Yeah? I want that in a public authority there's a reference installation where you show me that 20,000 users are working good with this solution I need. Yeah? So, and only think about Outlook and Thunderbird. Yeah? if you want a mail client, we imagine that that's our goal. You make a call for tenders, give me a mail client for 20,000 users. I don't think that anybody find here a single company where more than 20,000 Thunderbird instances are running. So you put every one of them out of business. Okay, I think that's my point.
That's your point, yeah.
Huh?
And now we're absolutely equal with the time. Sorry, no, I'm not the bad guy concerning the time. We should concentrate now on the points which could a pros mention to this. And of course, call for tender is a difficult area. And you need specialists for doing a very good and legally fine tender. But there are some things you might keep in mind if you are in charge of a tender, and if you are thinking of open source software as well for using in your company. First is never think in products, but in functions. This is it's absolutely simple, but it's crucial. The second point is encourage people to build budding teams. There are, of course, not so many big open source companies, but if you put together 3 smaller ones, you are in a range which is absolutely competing other commercial companies with proprietary products. The one nice thing is to ask very definitely for your most wanted function. Often, this function is not implemented in a proprietary product, of course, because it's only your wish that you want this, and the proprietary function, the proprietary program is for the whole world. And then the answer might be, okay, it's on our roadmap on 2025, something like this. In case of open source software, you can get an agreement with a bidding company, a company which is bidding here, that they will implement your function for in a definite time, so that you can use these functions. And of course, we all know that if you have a look, if you are focusing on sustainability and endurance, then it's absolutely crucial that you have access to the code. So you just have to ask all bidding teams to offer you a look into the source code. That's it. And then I think more or less 75 or 80% of the bidding companies are out. But in this time, the other side of the bidding teams. So, Robert, I think if you really want to avoid open source software, then you should go a step ahead. You must be very clever if you want to avoid open source software. And I found out that a very good trick to avoid open source software is the requirement overkill. The requirement overkill is fantastic because all your users will love you. Because you start with the requirement requests. They will think about Easter and Christmas in one day. They will produce requirements, tons of requirements, and you can encourage them to use even excessive demands, things they only dreamt of up before this day, and encourage them to think about future needs. What would be if you would have these functions, something like this? And then you write this down. And then there is only one step you have to make. Found out what is the most complex requirement, and then found somebody very important who wants this complex requirement. So within one step, the most complex requirements are the most important requirements. And then you are absolutely done because nobody can go against that. That would be a good reason, Robert.
I don't think so.
Short answer.
Yeah.
Short answer.
I don't think so. And I will make it short. if you focus on requirements from your users, you can go with one of the wisest guys on Earth, with Commander Spock, son of Sarek. The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. You know this guy?
No.
No Trekkies here? Oh, damn. Star Wars?
There was one.
Okay. Okay, for the rest of us, it's a fictional guy from Star Trek. Yeah.
They know him all.
And he said
They are just too shy.
and he said focus on the needs of the many. And Frank said you have to find an important guy, and this guy needs feature X.
That's it.
But you must have the strongness to say no to these guys. I was working in a big IT project.
Is this going to be a story again?
A short story in the ministry. Okay, and there are 5,000 users and one minister, and the one minister dictates the features he needs in the software, but he don't even use the software because he has these printing guys, you know, and all the 5,000 people are waiting for features, and the minister gets his features he never used. This was okay.
Yeah.
Story, short story.
Okay.
An even better way to avoid open source software is you demand standard compatibility. But not in the true meaning of standard, but in the meaning of if everyone is using it, it has to be a standard. And
Robert, du musst diesen Knopf drücken, sonst sehen die Leute die Folie nicht. Und du hast nichts zum Big Bang gesagt.
Sorry. I think you are hungry.
Yeah. So let's skip the rest.
It's very complicated to make that fast.
That was my favorite slide. Thank you.
Sorry. Okay, back to standard demanding. You demand standard compatibility, but as I already said, not in a way we mean standard, but in a way everyone uses software. And another short story. From Germany again. There were plans to specify the way you work as a public authority with digital documents and archiving digital documents. And so a federal ministry made a specification in XML to describe how this should work. It's a specification called XDOMEA. You can Google it. And it was not a standard. It was never meant as a standard, but all the public authorities in the whole country have these senior CIOs with a little IT knowledge, and they were looking for some hint, what can we do with all this email attachment stuff, and then this big agency came and said, that's a specification. And from that point on, every call for tender, we had it already, was demanding this XDOMEA specification as standard. We want that the product we use is compliant with this. That was a very a small step for companies who already earned money with their products. They could implement this XDOMEA specification, but no open source project with a sane mind would implement this specification because it was overblown. So,
with a clear mind, you mean?
Yes.
No clear-minded company would do this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, yes, this, standard compatibility might be okay, but give me this thing. Thank you. And be quiet. But the pros might say, right? We all know that standard means to be open and to be free. So there are very, very good examples for free software development tools, for example. I think most of the best are open source and free, based on free standards. And so you can really argue that if you want to make an ITC project very successfully, then you just really should stay with open standards at least, and better with open source software. And for example, if you could you imagine that Apple, Google, Microsoft will compete with the mobile world completely without open source, with open standards? I cannot think about this. And we saw these frontier breaking more and more. And at least the open source standardization should really, is comprehensive and reproducible, and this. So I think there are not very good reasons for avoiding open source. I had another suggestion by myself. This is a very nice thing: methodology. Methodology is nearly the same like Scientology. You have heard this, maybe. It's a kind of religion. You just have to believe. Believing is a very important thing with methodology. The nice thing is that if there is somebody who is really putting pressure onto an open source software project, then you say, okay, if we are going this new way, let's try a new methodology, and then something is coming. So if you are inventing new methodologies, you invent rules instead of responsibility. This seems reasonable, but if you do this with a software developing team, for example, you will get people who follow rules. And you will get people, you don't have people which are following their own responsibility anymore. They will be gone. So there is no responsibility and no identification with the product, and this is deadly. So this is a very nice thing if you want to avoid something. Then the next point is, if you have methods, there is no method you should use as it is out of the book. All methods must be adapted to your company. But if you force the people to follow the method, then you will get a lot of documentation, and what you will get is you will completely destroy this uncontrolled motivation. This is a very big problem. The people are motivated. They bring up solutions. And if you want to destroy that, just let them document every step. Then they will stop doing anything at all. And if there is a project, and you have good reasons for this documentation thing, because if there is a project and it fails, though you have produced 2 tons of paper, then you can say, oh, well, okay, we should have done this better. Next time we will produce 4 tons of paper. So this is perfect, Robert. And now it's your turn, short term.
I've already pressed the button. And I'll make it short. All this methodology stuff tends to be the main goal of work in companies, but you always have to remember that's the tool for your work. So if you want to do Scrum, do it, but don't let dictate Scrum as a method your whole work cycle. And talk more about documentation, all this stuff you need in Scrum than in your feature list. But now, my loved slide as a no-O's, that's a great idea. Hire certified Microsoft partners. And again, to get the mindset of this senior CIO in a company, I want to buy software and IT solutions like I buy a desk or a car. Yeah? Here's my money. Okay, that's my car. That's the mindset. And the calculation is simple. I can think, I'm a CEO. I think about, if I want open source software, I have to build up knowledge in my company to make good decisions. When I have this knowledge, I need to make decisions, and then I have to buy some consultants which implement my stuff. And everything of that step is very slow, because knowledge building takes time. On the other hand, I can go to my car dealer and say, okay, this is my money, this is my solution, ready. And in this battle, mostly the car dealer wins, and he is called Microsoft or SAP. And even if I'm a CEO which heard about the pros of open source software, I'm interested and I look into the open documentation. For Microsoft Office, it's hard to find critical bugs public announced. Only when they are known, they are announced, not before they are known global. So if I look in any open source project, they have public bug trackers, okay? And I click on the link and I see 850 open bugs, 30 critical. Yeah? I go home. The next point is I can read mailing lists as a CEO. And then I see how the guys talk to each other. Yeah? And that's sometimes very hard. And at last, the leader of all this, Linus Torvalds, is the CEO from Linux, I think. He showed his middle finger to the cameras of NVIDIA. And this is the impression I get from the community. Yeah? And on the other hand, I have my Microsoft car dealer, trust it, yeah? Suit up. So I think I will go to them. Yeah?
Ready?
Yeah.
Okay, but well, you can come up with some disadvantages of this procedure. The first is you really have to think about what the most important point of the success of your project is. Of course, speed is a factor, and in most cases, it's a very important factor. But you have to imagine that when your project is done, it has to run, and I would really emphasize the point that the running phase is in most of the times longer, or it should be longer than the project time. So sustainability is much more important than speed concerning to the project time. So I think one should have a closer look to that, and may have another look for the, how do you call not the car dealer, the other branches. So anyway, you can, of course, would you trust somebody who is in your company and you know he is certified in a special area? Then he will find solutions from this area. This is absolutely clear. And more, even more, he will earn money with this solution you pay him to find. So you pay him to find a solution, and you pay him for bringing in the solution. You pay twice. This is not a very good idea, Robert. This is not very good. And the thing with the bugs is very nice. Of course, there are 80 bugs and 30 critical, but the bugs in the proprietary software never are published. So this is not a very good thing to compare. And especially if you know the bugs and they are published, then you can feel kind of safe because you are at least in the possibility to fix them, right? Yeah. And so this means, of course, for the security and the confidentiality, the best you can get, absolutely the best you can get. And if there is somebody who tells you the bullshit from the other slide, maybe you should answer with these points. I think this would be a good idea. So if there is anybody talking against open source, then he should better reasons. For example, like this. I like this very much because I've seen this a lot of times. There is a problem, and the problem is nicely described, and the impact of the project is nicely described. So there's no reason not to consider open source software for this project. And then somebody gets an idea and says, oh, open source software, well, that might be not a good idea. Let's see what the connectivity says. And then suddenly there are a lot of proprietary infrastructure components like databases, like directories, and then suddenly it's not that easy to solve this little problem because you have to deal with this connectivity. This is a very good thing because it seems easy and then suddenly it gets complicated. And we have nice companies like SAP or Autodesk or something like this who are, well, just by accident, very close to Microsoft. This is not, they are absolutely independent, but they are kind of, well, managed, engaged, I think we would say. So if you have these products in your company, you really must be a clever open source guy to find a solution for these things. There are solutions, of course, but they keep under the table. And if this is not enough, just specify a special file format, for example, for interchange with the people, with the citizens or something like this, and then you make a very big point. That might be a very good idea to avoid open source. Hier, ich habe schon gedrückt.
Thank you. I think we should have made more like a battle, okay?
Short battle.
A short battle. Everything awake? Yeah. Okay. To counter this, I have never seen a proprietary solution where you could not talk with a REST API or JSON or some XML or SQL against the solution. Basically, it's not magic. Yeah? There's a database, there's some data structure and information, and for us open source guys, it's no problem to get data out from the database. Yeah? So, your point.
That's it? Oh, very sharp. Okay. Then give me this click machine. Then this is one of my best slides, I think, as well. We encapsulate it in Drumfire. This is actually not from me. It's from it's stolen from the very nice book. It's somebody wants to phone? Okay. It's from Timothy Lister and Tom DeMarco, which are very prominent in the project management area. And they created this thing which they call the team death. So if you have a team and they found open source software and they are going on and on, you have to react. Otherwise, you would get open source software. So what should you do? There are these nice 5 things which you can do and which are perfectly fine to destroy every team. The first is defensive management. You only have to suppose that nobody is doing what you want them to do. So you go into this kind of micromanagement and track everything which happened. Only this thing will kill every motivation. If this is not enough, you have the physical separation. Well, you know, in every company it's the same. There is less space, so never put them together. They are breeding and working, and so separate it, just separate them. The best is in 2 separate buildings. This is another very, very good stroke. Third thing is separation of time. Just give them 5 things to do. And demand they must be prepared in similarity. So not after each other, but similar. This will produce time slides, and they are all not processors. They might look like or act like, but they are not. They cannot do the time slide. So this will reduce the productivity extremely. And the last 2 things are very nice. If the project time runs short, if you run short of the project time, you just have to reduce the quality. Nobody loves that when his product is reduced in quality. Of course, you could prolong the project, but you just have to put in some senseless milestones, which might be, it must be ready then. No reason why. Just say it must. And then the milestone is in there, and then you cannot prolong. And then every motivation is gone. So you have the team, they are dealing with open source software, but the project, unfortunately, will not lead to a successful ending. That is a good idea, huh?
Nope.
Nope.
Nope. Many of the CEOs in big companies underestimate the motivation of the open source guys, and as I said already, they underestimate how the communication works. If you can separate them and put them in separate buildings, but we are used to working on our screen in a dark room with no people, and our information stream is a Git commit log or a bug tracker, and so on. And so I think you don't get us. But a good way to avoid all this open source stuff is to stop your efforts at the end of the project. Assume that you are willing, that your company was willing to try these crazy things. Then you made a roadmap, and I assume that you function in an ITIL way of IT service deployment. And then you have to think about your IT strategy and your and all these ITIL phases, but it's the normal behavior at the start of a project to don't think about the continual improvement and operational stuff in a project. So we let these crazy open source guys do their work. Yeah? The project is starting, and we think it will cost us 3 years of time. And in the second year of the open source project, we start another IT project without telling to the open source guys, and we introduce through the backdoor another proprietary solution. I think that's a very good idea to kill those projects. Huh?
Do you want to say something to the last bullet as well?
No. Okay. Everything is hungry.
Everything is hungry? Everybody as well. Okay. So then let me just make it, du hast schon gedrückt, okay, like this. Of course, you all know this is a nice attempt, but it would not work because there is kind of self-organization in the open source software, as well as you said, these dark room guys, they communicate in obscure ways, and news are spreading. For example, like kind of a guerrilla information infrastructure. That is the point, you cannot control that. There is no central point of information controlling. And when you have an open source project and the project is ended and the people went back to their departments, you have a kind of nuclei in every department. Don't underestimate the influence of one person who is absolutely convinced of the right way, of the good side of the power. And this means they will build up little guerrilla structures within your company. So mind that, right? Mind that. I would suggest another thing, and this is the nuclear bomb. If nothing worked until now, and the project is done, and the software is into your company, there is, I think, only one solution. You have to throw the nuclear bomb. You have to demand an organizational inefficiency, and you have to get in external experts which analyze your complete organizational structure. They will do that, and of course, they will do what they will ever do, what they have done before, and they are not very flexible, those guys. So they are coming and telling you how one should do one thing. Not your thing, but one company, one thing, like all the others. So they will find, of course there are problems. In every company there are problems. And you must just generate one problem and make it that big and find a big stakeholder which knows this problem. Then you get your money for these organizational analysis. And if they are in the company, they will examine and examine and examine. And they will, of course, find some problems which are related to open source software. And they will analyze that it's not very good and not very good for your company to follow two ways, for example. You have this open source way and you have the proprietary software. And if you make up the right calculation, you always can find a very good reason to follow proprietary software. So this is, I think, a really nuclear bomb. And this is the last solution. And I think now we can get up to the more or less last slide. Unfortunately, if you can see here, we haven't closed these brackets, right? So as an HTML code, this was never going to work. Why? Because after this nuclear bomb, there is only the nuclear winter. We call it the nuclear winter games because you are all in it, the whole company, with all pros and cons. And of course, external experts, they are a little bit like the Holy Inquisition. They're coming from above. They have the highest credentials. They can do everything, but they are unfortunately a little bit expensive.
Yeah. And the point is that we think, I'm the open source guy now, that we think mostly in a way of find a solution for the technical problem. And if you reach this state of your company's behavior, you are above every technical problem. You are Absolutely. In decision makers meetings, boring stuff like that.
People call it policy.
Policy.
Politics.
And you can't win that game with a technical discussion. Arguments doesn't matter there.
Yeah, right. So I think this will work. You will throw out open source software with this bomb. You will get a lot of problems, other problems, but this might be not so bad because depending on which side you are standing, a very big problem is a friend of the small problem. And before you have only open source software as a problem. Now you have so many big problems that nobody is looking to open source software anymore. So, mission completed. But unfortunately, now we have that solution, right? Well, you are a little bit capped in this thing. And yeah, now to enter the lunch, sorry, I just want to show you these nice.
It's dinner time.
Things. It's dinner. Yeah, it's dinner. It's dinner. This is a very good sentence from Warren Buffett. He's gone. He's done that. But this is not only for not only for open source, not only for the technical thing, but we really should all keep in mind that we are often not aware of the chains of habits. And when you are going the way, you only will recognize that there are chains when it's too late. So let's keep all an eye onto open source software. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.